and you're watching Juraj Slafkovsky once again find a level of comfort that is
Hmm.
undeniable. The chemistry he has with Cole Caulfield, rounding up the line with Nick Suzuki, he is more or less turned into a point of game player once again. I mean, as much as I guess I wanted him to be his own man and find his own identity on his own line without what I call his security blanket in Suzuki and Caulfield, I mean, there's nothing. I mean, you can't deny it. I mean, he just looks the part. He just looks so much more comfortable. And I suppose, Shaun, that's quite the compliment to Nick Suzuki, who I dare I say is one of the most underrated players in hockey.
Yeah, you give me your problems and I'll fix them. That is Nick Suzuki. He'll have no
Yeah.
problem doing that. I think that watching Slafkovsky again, we saw it every year around this time. He kind of turns a corner a little bit, feeling a
Yeah.
little bit better about himself. But I guess that is a little concerning about Juraj Slafkovsky. I would be concerned about Juraj Slafkovsky, the fact that he can't play with anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
He has not shown that he can play with anybody else. He has not shown that he can be the driver of the line. That was an opportunity for him to be the one that drives the line. Now, he's young. There's time for him to develop into that role. There's time for him to develop with other players. But I was on the draft floor when he was drafted. I spoke with him on the draft floor probably about 7.5 minutes after he was drafted first overall in Montreal. And they roll him up. They get you right in your booth. They say you have 4 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what comes out of his mouth? Well, I hear there's an opening next to Suzuki and Caulfield. His mind was set the moment he was drafted that he wanted to play with those players. And I'm with you. It works. He's the best version of himself when he's with those players. An extra gear, an extra level of confidence, a little extra swagger, the physicality. But I'm not going to lie. I think it's concerning that he can't play with anybody else.
But concerning to what degree? Like I mean, I hear the point that you're making. Um, and I think about other players, and I try not to get caught in the trap of because he was selected first overall, he has to do this. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember, even a year ago, at one point watching him kind of struggle and try to find his identity, or he'd fall down easily for a big man and didn't look confident a lot of the times early on. And I remember watching him, and Shaun, I'd be like, just show me one flash, one power burst, one stiff arm,
Mm-hmm.
one power move that leads me to believe that the Canadians chose the right guy. And there have been bits and spurts of him looking very much like a legit top tier player, someone that can perhaps be a legitimate top three. But then not everybody grows that fast. And I mean, does it cool the Jets when we talk about the Canadians rebuilding timeline with Juraj Slafkovsky's personal development timeline? And that while it can be concerning, it's really not that concerning.
I guess if you want to equate it, the reason that it's equated is because that was the first big draft. That was the first big moment for Kent Hughes. So the rebuild, yes, he was put into place in January of that year. He was there
Yeah.
for the trade deadline. He made a couple maneuvers and then the offseason hit. But at that draft, that was the Kent Hughes show. Picking Juraj Slafkovsky over Shane Wright or whoever else you wanted to put him over. Making the Kirby Dach deal
Yeah.
right after that. Like we were
Yeah.
about to talk, the Kirby Dach deal goes down while we're talking to Juraj Slafkovsky, as I was explaining earlier.
Yeah.
So that's why it's always going to be equated. But it is unfair to equate Slafkovsky's growth period with the Canadiens' rebuild because you mentioned about being an 18 or 19-year-old and kind of getting bumped. I'm telling you, at the draft, from when he was drafted in June to when he showed up at training camp in September, he put on an extra inch and a half and like
Yeah.
20 pounds. It's insane how kids grow like that. And he just looked awkward. He wasn't used to his body. We're
It's
starting to
also
see him.
an attitude thing too, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to have a little bit of that bleep you at like you have to be mean a little bit. And I'm not,
Hmm.
I mean, he's big and physical, but you got to be able to learn how to use that. If it's not in you, if you're not Brady or Matthew Kachuk
Yeah.
or Nazem Kadri kind of, you got to learn how to be real nasty. It's a man's league. It's a serious league.
Yeah, it'll take him a little bit because I don't think he played in not he didn't play he played in men's leagues, but he didn't play in grinding,
Yeah.
dirty kind
Yeah.
of hockey. The international game that he was playing prior was different. So I see it. I see there's moments when he gets angry and I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Please
Yeah.
get angry. I'm with you on that. But he's 20. I'm going to relax on that. I'm going to relax on
I know.
him being able to play with other players as well. But
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's the one thing that we've clearly seen. You have to put him with Suzuki and Caulfield. There's no other options. He's just dead weight if you put him anywhere else.
Well, I don't disagree with that one bit. And look, I mean, he was held off the score sheet against the Tampa Bay Lightning on late Sunday afternoon in the 5-2 win, right? Picked up the assist in the 4-0 win over Florida. Was on a little bit of a heater. Had,
Yeah.
three straight games with 3 straight points. And, as we talked about in the beginning here of Slafkovsky, and where he's at, after 36 games played and 20 points, that yes, he does look a lot more comfortable, which I guess takes me to the Canadian second line and the establishment of that second line. If I could talk about priorities, if I could talk about concern, to me, what's more concerning, if we're to nitpick here for a team that's clearly rebuilding, is establishing Kirby Dach as a legit number two center, the understudy to Nick Suzuki, seeing if Alex Newhook is better off on the wing than he is down the middle. Can he round out that top six with his speed and finishing touches? And then what Patrick Laine brings to the table. Can his 5-on-5 play get better? His power play obviously has brought the Canadians, I think, into an elite category now this year with the
Mhm.
man advantage. I mean, that's a pleasant turn of events. How the special teams has been exceptionally strong, both units. But the concern for me is, yeah, Kirby Dach came in as the biggest X factor on the Montreal Canadiens this season. It wasn't close. Like, if he hits, Shaun, the rebuild is on track and it's moving at a good rate of speed. If he doesn't hit, you're like, oh man, you're scratching your head. Does Ken Hughes have to cover, himself like he did with Jonathan Kovacevic? Oh, made a mistake. Bring in
Mhm.
Alex Carrier. Bad move. Kirby Dach, bad move to be determined. But that to me is a huge, not a huge concern, but a huge point of interest in watching this team play out the rest of the season with Laine, Dach, and Newhook. What about you?
Yeah, if Kirby Dach can turn the rest of the season and make it look like the 2 games he played in Florida,
Oh
then
boy, Shaun.
then the question's answered. But
Yes.
the biggest question on the Kent Hughes rebuild, accelerated rebuild, was Kirby Dach and Juraj Slafkovsky. Could Juraj Slafkovsky be that top guy? And I have a lot less questions on Juraj Slafkovsky than I do on Kirby Dach. And we could talk about Newhook or Laine all you want and establishing the second line. It's about establishing your strength down the middle. I don't think the Canadians are strong down the middle when you're telling me that Kirby Dach's number 2 on your team. So that's the question that has to be answered by year's end. By year's end,
Yeah.
if Ken Hughes can look up and down this roster and say Kirby Dach's the guy I want it to be, then he's gonna move forward with what they have. Demidov's gonna come in. They're gonna keep slowly rebuilding, maybe a piece here, piece there. If Kirby Dach does not answer the question for Ken Hughes, then they are wheeling and dealing and get ready for a big offseason for the Canadians because that is something that they need. Look, we could go down the what's the future of Jake Evans? What do they want to do with a Christian Dvorak? That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Kirby Dach being Kirby Dach that they wanted Kirby Dach to be is still a question years into after his acquisition.
Before we move on, where are you? I see this online a lot when we talk about Kirby Dach, and yeah, he's
Mhm.
post Christmas break, he's had a great return to form against Florida, against the Tampa Bay Lightning. That second line looks better every single game they play, and I wonder about the line of thinking I've seen online is Kirby Dach bad play gets past that injury, the recovery from it, adapting to the NHL again, while
Mhm.
I guess psychologically impacting your play. Maybe if you instinctually went into a corner before the injury, now you think twice before doing that. I don't know. I'm not in his head. I'm wondering out loud. But where are you? Do you laugh that thought out of the room immediately, or do you think, oh, there's something behind being patient, dulling the knives before you carve up Kirby Dach because he went 12 games between goals.
I 100% impatient about this. I'll
Okay.
tell you, they have to have an answer by the end of the season. But I am patient about this knee injury. He missed a calendar year. I know too many professional athletes that I've spoken with, that I know personally, that have had injuries, significant knee, leg injuries, and they come back and they're healthy and they're playing, but they still say it took a year before they could ever be the player that they wanted to be, or the player that they were before, or never came back to that. That is the other thing that Ken Hughes has to watch out for. He has to realize, is he ever going to be the player that we want because of that significant knee injury that cost him a year? I am 100% on the patient. So I have to see the improvement. I have to see more games, more consistency like we just saw. But I don't need a 65-point season at the end to say, okay, Kirby Dach's the guy. I can see a 40-point season, but I saw the progression where he was getting back to where he needed to be. So if I'll put my hand up, it's up. I am on be patient with Kirby Dach, because what could happen is that you're impatient, you get rid of him, and then you see him somewhere else thriving. And your good friend, my good friend, Mitch Gallows brought up a guy like Dylan Strome all the time. When you hit your third franchise and then you just take off. And that's a scary proposition to see someone that you had in your clutches and you just weren't patient enough. So yeah, that's a tough one to judge, but that's why Kent Hughes gets paid more money than you or I.
That's Shaun Campbell. Listen to him weekdays 10 to 2 on TSN 690 with Mitch Gallo. Catch him on your Laval Rocket broadcast. The Laval Rocket struggling losers of 2 in a row, getting thumped by Syracuse at the last bell. They're back in action on Friday.